Today I want to answer a question which I get a lot, and that is which kind of kit I would buy if I would have only a certain amount of money to spare. And the number I'm focusing on today is it should be under 1,000 euros. It should be good for video. It should be upgradable, so I want to have interchangeable lenses, and I will share this kit in this video with you. Building a kit for a camera with only 1,000 euros I think is really hard, because looking at older cameras, I almost always think that there are certain specs that are just so much better in newer cameras, and making those drawbacks or having to make those drawbacks in those cameras is really a hard task or something I cannot really handle. But on the good side is that I found a camera that is pretty new, which has amazing specs, and I still have a little bit of room to put on some accessories to this camera set, and I have all the links to the products in the description below, and I also made a kit on kit.com, and the link is in the description below as well, and that way you can look up the products yourself and maybe adjust it or change something. At the end of the video I also will mention a couple upgrades I would make if I have a little room in my budget and want to get a little bit more quality. And I also have to mention that the kit itself is focused on video making, and you can replace some parts to make it more photography centered. Overall, I would say it's a great travel kit at 1,000 euros. It is rather cheap in terms of the expandable camera systems, and it's focused on photography and video as well. So let's dive right into the camera which I chose for this set. I'm basing this kit on the Canon EOS M6. There's also the M5, and that is one of the upgrade options I would say, because the M6 basically has no viewfinder, so you only have a screen and not something where you can put your eye to and then look through there. So it only has a big screen to kind of work with. You can have a additional item to kind of add a viewfinder, but if you're focusing on video, a viewfinder is oftentimes not necessary. But if you focus on photography, maybe you will have to kind of get to the M5 and spend a little more, but basically get the same camera with an additional viewfinder. Other than that, the camera has 24.2 megapixels. It has an amazing sensor. It has great ISO capabilities. You can flip the screen up so you can actually see yourself if you want to take a selfie or you want to do some vlog style video, for example. You can shoot up to 60 frames per second in full frame. There's no 4K, but as I mentioned in the 4K video, I personally think that for most consumers 4K is not necessary yet. You don't have 4K screens. Computers have a hard time handling the 4K editing, and just having the hassle of more storage, worse performance when video editing, and all these things, I personally think that 4K is not really necessary at this point. So not having 4K in this camera makes the decision a little easier which mode to actually shoot in. Other than that, the camera also has image stabilization, and it also features video autofocus, which is amazing. Also, it's a APS-C style sensor. It's not full frame, so you have a crop factor there. It is very lightweight, and especially not having the viewfinder, it's also more lightweight than the Canon EOS M5, and it's also smaller than the Canon EOS M5. But this is kind of the base, and the camera, as of this recording, costs around 850 or 860 euros. Buying this camera for a budget of 1,000 euros, this leaves us with 150 euros to buy accessories. And accessories actually are something that you never should forget, because oftentimes you think you get a camera and then you have everything. But mostly those cameras come without an SD card, maybe one battery, and nowadays I often see that the cameras don't have an external charger as well. So let's start there. I would definitely get a third-party charger which can charge 2 batteries at the same time, and most often those chargers come with additional batteries as well. So I would go for a third-party charger with a third-party battery, or maybe even 2 batteries, so you have 3 batteries in total. With these mirrorless cameras, more batteries are always important because the screen is always on, and also if you have the M5, the viewfinder itself is also an electronic viewfinder, so it always draws power if you have the camera turned on. So having more batteries in your pocket is always a good thing. For this kit I chose a charger that can charge 2 batteries at the same time, and there are also 2 additional batteries included, so you end up with 3 batteries in total, and the charger plus the batteries is 32 euros. Next, you would think that the camera actually came with an SD card. That is not the case, so we have to buy a SD card separately, and I would go for one SD card with 128 gigabytes. This SD card costs around 43 euros as of recording this video. SD card prices kind of fluctuate and you never know which kind of price you will get. I personally almost always buy Lexar or SanDisk. Those two brands are really good and I have both equally and they work well. So I would focus on those two brands. In terms of storage capacity, I would say the 128 gigabytes is probably enough for a weekend getaway with photos and a little bit of hiking video, maybe something like that. But having a backup of this would be great. In terms of the budget, it is not really possible. I would probably get a second one of these if I can spare it, because being out in the woods or some kind of adventure and then you run out of memory on your card is probably one of the worst things that can happen to you, especially considering that you cannot really recreate the memories. And if you shoot a lot of video, it's really hard to kind of sort those videos while on the camera and just viewing on the camera. So having two of these cards would probably be enough for me as well. But in general, I can say that having a little bit of more memory than you think you will use is probably a good thing. For this kit, I have to say that more than one is not possible, but 128 gigabytes is plenty. And if you offload your footage regularly to a computer, for example, you should be fine. The next thing on the list is a small tripod, and this is the PIXI, I think it's called, from Manfrotto. It's around 20 euros in the German Amazon store. It does not come with this base. This is something that I attached to it to kind of be able to switch the camera more regularly. If you only use this and don't have anything on the bottom of your camera, this works fine, and just screw it on. And you can adjust it like so. You have the small button here and then you can just move the camera around. You can set it up on a table, but you can also use it like this in terms of a kind of extension of your arm, maybe a little bit of a vlogging setup. This is what I'm using this one for. This, however, is again something where I would think about an upgrade if you have a little bit more room to play. I would actually say if you have a little bit more budget, I would go for a different tripod than this one, and that would be the Sirui 3T35R. I have no idea who makes those names, because those are really hard to remember. But the Sirui tripod is 90 euros, so this one is 20, the Sirui is 90. The difference between the two is that this one is basically just this. The Sirui, however, has an extension tube here, so you can actually have it up to around 30 centimeters. Now, this might not sound like much, but it's basically a selfie stick for a real camera, so you actually can make the selfie shooting a little easier and have a little bit more of a distance to the camera. But it also is a nice feature to have, because you can prop up the camera on a desk, for example, and have a little bit of room to play with instead of having this tripod, which you would have to build a base for or something to actually elevate it a little bit. However, it's a little bit more expensive, but it also comes with a really nice ball head instead of having something like this, which is rather cheap, I would say, and sometimes the camera can start to move. But the Sirui tripod is actually with a nicer ball head, and I think it's the same ball head that I'm using on the Sirui that I have here. So I really like this kind of system where you can actually tighten the camera more and also can take vertical shots, which is not possible with this one, because you basically can't have the camera completely vertical. So if you have a little bit more budget, I would go for the Sirui tripod. The next thing on the list is only interesting for people who want to make videos, and that is the Rode Video Micro. This is not the Rode Video Mic Pro, it is the Video Micro, which is essentially a really small version of the Video Mic Pro, but it only uses the camera's power to actually power the microphone. So you do not need to carry any additional batteries or something like that. It's a really nice small microphone that can just be put on top of your camera and then connected to the side of the camera. And this is one of the main reasons I chose the Canon M6 for this kit instead of, for example, the Sony a5100, which is a nice camera on paper in terms of the specs, but it does not feature a audio in for a microphone, which I think is kind of insane, because having an external microphone for video recording, I think it's a really, really good thing to have that and to record better and nicer audio, because as far as I know, studies have shown that audio is more important than video quality, so having a nice audio quality is something you should actually care about. So the Video Micro goes for around 50 euros, and that's about it for this kit. So the whole kit is microphone, a little bit of a tripod, SD card, the camera itself, and a charger plus more batteries. The camera also comes with a lens, which is a 15-45 Canon lens, and that is with the crop factor taken into consideration a 24-75mm lens. That is a kind of a standard range, and I would say having the 24mm for vlogging is a nice range. I personally prefer vlogging in a 25 or 24mm range, but if you want to, for example, do more video and have a more immersive video, then having a different lens on there would be a great thing to kind of get a wider field of view. But that is one of the beauties of this kit, to actually be able to kind of extend it and buy more gear towards it and, for example, change the lens later. So as of this recording, the camera, the tripod, the microphone, the SD card, the batteries and the additional charger are a total of 998 euros, which is just under 1000 euros. So this is the kit I would recommend if you want to do photo and video. With the slow motion capabilities at 60 frames per second, I think this is a really nice camera, and the 24 megapixels of the sensor are also great for photography. The microphone is great to have additional audio or better quality audio. The tripod is nice for vlogging or maybe just putting it on a table and having the camera stand somewhere. And the additional batteries are really necessary, I would say, because it's a mirrorless camera and it basically eats batteries by the minute. But if you have a little more budget, I would go for a couple more things. And that highly depends if you do video or photo. The first thing I would change in the kit is the tripod, as I already mentioned, and that is something that you should think about in the beginning, because it essentially means either you spend 20 euros here and then spend 90 again, or you do not spend the 20 euros here but start spending the 90 on the other side, so you basically don't buy twice. But that would be the tripod, and I would definitely recommend almost everybody to get that. The second upgrade I would go for is only important or interesting for video people, and that is the Zhiyun Crane M. That is a stabilizer for mirrorless cameras, which are really lightweight, and the Canon M6 is something that is really lightweight, even with the additional microphone on top of it. So the Zhiyun Crane M is a really good addition. I'm personally using the Zhiyun Crane 3, which is the big brother of the Crane M, essentially, and it handles my Sony A7 really well. And the Crane M is something that would not be able to kind of handle my camera because it's too heavy, but the M6 is actually light enough to be handled by the Crane M really nicely, and that costs around 460 euros, which is a steep investment, but I think in terms of smooth video, it's a really, really nice one. So that is one upgrade that I would make if I would do video or mostly video. The last upgrade I want to talk about is the Canon lens EF-M 22mm at f2.0, and it's an STM lens. It's around 210 euros. I think this upgrade is more interesting for photographers to have a lens that equals a 35mm on full frame. For video, I would say I would go for a lens that is more around 15, maybe 16, 17mm on a crop sensor, because that is a more immersive video and that gets people more kind of into the world you are trying to show. 35mm or the 22mm f2 Canon EF-M. I think it could work well in video, but only for specific shots. And for a gimbal work, for example, I would go for a maybe 17mm, that is the standard lens on the Canon EOS M6. If you would buy the whole kit I suggested in this video without the Manfrotto, because then you would have two tripods, it comes around 1,750 euros. And now that is almost double the budget, but it also includes an additional lens, the gimbal, and also a more high quality tripod. If, however, you only go for the base kit without the Manfrotto and just add the new tripod, that comes around 1,050 euros. I hope this kind of kit breakdown was helpful for you in building a new kit for your next travel adventure, to buy a new camera maybe, or make more videos and photos. I have links to all the gear in the description below. I get a small commission if you buy something with that, and that helps me make this channel a possibility. If you have any questions about the gear or anything else, please leave them in the comments down below, and also message me if you actually decide to buy this kind of kit, and share with me what you think about the kit and also how you kind of work with it and what you actually produce. Now subscribe to my channel if you want more videos like this. Dislike the video if you disliked it, but hopefully you didn't. So like it if you like it, share it with someone who wants a new camera or maybe needs some advice on buying a new camera, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.